Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And I would also like to welcome Aoife. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's beautiful out. Spring is here, and I'm happy, definitely.
Wonderful, wonderful. This series is all about the 14 reflex points that causes negative reaction to the horse and also to the riders. And in the past, we have talked about other points on the back. Today, we talk about the ones on the side that gets hit by the girth. And if you haven't watched the series before, you definitely want to see them be we have done previously because I have learned so much from Aoife, and I think we all can learn from each other, and that's what this is all about. So these are the points we talked about before, the ones on top here. And to talk today is about the reflex points on the side. Now your leg is there, your girth is there, and the horse's function, if it's a jumper or a dressage ride, or even just a pleasure horse, a Western horse, no matter what you want the full function of the muscles. So here's the latissimus muscle, and on the edge of the latissimus muscle, I put two X's here. And then down here, you see from the side, the pectoralis muscle. And you also see two X's there. So these are the points. The horse reacts, you react when you get poked on it. So we've seen a lot of areas over the past that people always try to optimize the relationship between man, horse, and saddle. This is always a little intro I do between for all our topics, just to bring everybody back to say that people always map the horse to see where are these reflex points your equipment should not hurt. Okay, so there is important lines like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to know the width of the shoulder. We want to know um, behind the shoulder, because between line 2 and line 4 is where we are having the contact of the saddle, which distributes the rider's weight, which should be in the center of the horse. This is the balance line. And then at 5, that's as far as the bars on an army saddle, Western saddle, packing saddle should be, but never pressure there. So we talked about that in the previous episodes. Definitely worthwhile looking at it. Here are the spots again. And you also see the pink bar here. That's where the saddle needs to focus on, right there. Okay, that would be the middle of the longest muscle. And it's also a very thick muscle. Right here, you see where I put my green one on the bottom here. That rides on the middle of the longest muscle, the belly of the muscle. That's where we want to put the contact. You want to stay away here on the right. You see the horse's trapezius, you see the splenialis, very tender muscles. You don't want to pressure. And for sure, you don't want to put any pressure on the shoulders, down the spine, or in the lumbar area, as we talked previously. So today is all about these spots on the sides. And here you can see a picture on the left, and you see these the billets, okay? And these three things is the trapezius, what connects the shoulder blade with the upper arm, and the muscle right there would be the pectoralis. And you see how this girth sits right on the edge of the pectoralis. Who in the right mind wants to have the edge on their underneath your armpit always poked or tickled? You hate that. Maybe you did this as a little kid, but you definitely don't enjoy that. So the girth really needs to be in the right spot. Should be always between these two circles and on the center on the latissimus. You don't want it right underneath the rider's knee, because you will push quite a bit into that, what of course creates a larger problem. So when we look at the horse's organ placement, we always wondered, why is my horse not symmetric? Well, our organs are not symmetric in our body, neither is the horse's organ symmetric in their body. We learned to mount from the left, and the story I was told that, because the sword was on the right and the soldier had to mount from the left. But if you really look a little deeper and you watch wild horses in their fight and protect each other's certain parts, they always protect their right side. They also have a left eye dominant. And when you look where the cecum is more on the right side. So now when the horse is digesting, they bow to the right more than to the left. And this is what an osteopath would say. But you also wonder, why does all the race industry gallops around the racetrack around the left side? And why does all the vaulting Olympic competition only gallops left? They never gallop right. See, the horses digest the food and bends the intercostal muscle to the right, to the right, to the right for 3 years before he even starts riding. The left side is the dominant. Okay, so if you digest something and you have a little gassy, blowy stomach, you don't want any pressure there. So the horse doesn't like it either on the right side. So depends who you listen to. Maybe you listen to somebody who says, oh, you know, when the horse is birth trauma, how they come out of the mom, you know, they either graze first with the left or with the right. And that's how they place their foot. Well, all good stories. But the interesting part was, after 45 years, I have measured over 260,000 horses, still on records. And it's true, no matter what continent I visit, 70% are bigger on one side, the left side often. But when I measured wild horses, they're almost even in the skeleton, even though they have the same uneven organ placement like humans. So when I'm going to come back to this. When we're going to talk about these reflex points, we also need to identify the left side and the right side. They're not necessarily the same because nature didn't make them the same. So here I made a little video, and what I did, you see the cross section where the girth would be, where the heart is, and this is the horse's cross section. And then I took an egg, put an elastic band around it, made it really, really tight. And it just, let's see if I can get that to play. If we take an egg and pretend this is the horse's sternum, this is the horse's withers, and the horse is wide on the rib cage. So I put an elastic band around it. If you take a toothpick and check out where the girth or the billets would be the tightest or the loosest is actually here on the sides. So as soon as I go on the widest part, it gets really tight. And if I go to the bottom of the sternum, I break this toothpick. So the biggest pressure is down there and of course on top. But here on the side, the elastic is actually very loose. So the question is, when we put a girth on it, do we want the girth here on the sides where it's tight and where the knee is? No. Do we want it on the sternum? No. So just like I demonstrated with the elastic band, there is very little pressure. So we need to understand that, but we also need to understand that certain type of girth are really, really bad, because what's happening here is the pressure goes always from one billet buckle to the other. Okay, so what I'm showing you in this picture here, often we get concentrated pressure from girth directly on the behind the sternum plate. The pressure right here in the solar plexus, the diaphragm. And if you look at the pectoral, the stomach muscles here, muscles are connected with tendons to another muscle or with ligaments to the bone. Here you see the different pectoralis muscle, how they connect with each other with these tendons. And you notice there's a tendon right here at the end of the sternum plate. And where a muscle starts, the insertion, and where muscle ends, origin, or other way around, I always get that wrong, I'm sorry. So
origin, insertion, yep, you're right.
So that's where you do want to have the least amount of pressure. You do not want to have contact there, because then the horse reacts negative. You do the same. So you can see on these fancy shaped saddles, if you do the same, maybe not with a toothpick, maybe with a pencil, you run your pencil down here, you will see how easy it is. But when you come here, you will break the pencil. The worst part is, in the front, there is no contact. That hangs just totally loose. So all the pressure is on 1 inch. So instead of, like in the old days, have a nice weight-bearing surface, we have to worry about what's happening if we have pressure. Now look at this vein here. Okay, so we need to understand it a little bit. What are we trying to understand? What we're trying to achieve? Do we really want to create such an uneven pressure? And where should the girth be? Okay. Well, we got to understand that the elbow is in the way. So that elbow moves back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you can see sometimes it causes girth rupts. We all had horses with girth rupts. Sure, you could have parasites. Sure, you could have other issues. But where that D-ring is of your girth, Western or buckle of your English saddle, it's absolutely important to understand that you don't hit these reflex points. Now, many horses, like you, when you walk down with your friends and somebody comes from behind and hits your side right on the edge of the latissimus, you jump out. And isn't that funny? So why is that so funny when people jerk away from pain or from tickling? Because that's what we used to do as kids. But we don't want to do it unintentionally to our horses, right? We don't want to show misbehavior in the horses because I just didn't know what I didn't know. Well, Eva and here are here to explain a little bit that there is nerve, ligaments, veins, areas we need to understand as riders. Horses will always hide the pain. So recognize the deformity. It starts most of the time in the neck. Okay, and you see the nerve lines. Okay, so there is many pain scales on the industry, and they're explaining that now, and the different veterinarians, we cannot not see it anymore. So today's session is all about where should the girth be? Remember my X story? This is the widest part. That's where the elastic band is narrow. Here's the elbow. Folks, remember, when the horses moves, that elbow comes back and forth. You want it above the elbow, which this girth is, but it's right on the edge of the pectoralis muscle. That's when you get poked in your armpits. So it has to be just below the widest area, where my toothpick on the example was so easy. Right? So make sure your buck is well protected. And if you have a jumping saddle, the easiest to remember, always end up in the last 3 holes from the top down. That's where you want to be, right? All the way to the top on the billets. All right, Eva, take it away and tell me a little bit, how would that relate if anything like that irritates on a rider? Because I have to tell you, and I'm don't want to offend anybody here, but riding is still a sport. And I see often very unfit riders, and in the old days, we had to sweep the barn a lot. Today, we use a leaf blower. I see people using sweeping machines. Why were we so much active back then? Was it the lack of cell phones and the lack of internet? I don't know. The fact is, we see a lot of people now, because of today's society, today's technology, today's world we live in, okay, that the people, and especially the riders, are not as fit as they used to be anymore. So often do I see people who lack core muscle, or they don't have the proper shoulder or upper body muscles to keep themselves soft, as funny as that sounds. You want to be strong, but you want to be soft. But you got to be able to ride your horse with your seat, and you can't flop around there like a Jello bean. So unfortunately, that's what's happening there. And I think you are in the leading field here, who has shown many excitements in this field, because what you do is fun for riders. So tell me a little bit about how you can help us riders, saddle salespeople, saddle makers, saddle fitters, to guide the riders to understand that they have such a disadvantage when equipment doesn't fit right for them as for the horse.
Right. You said some really, really powerful things there. And I think based on what I understood, I digested and thought about, I want to start with, maybe let's start with the last part and then I'll work my way back. But the last part was, in order for us to understand a sense of what is taking place in our horse, we must work towards engaging and understanding it ourselves. And that would be as simple as not being like Jello, having a sense of muscular density, which is what that's called, which is the difference between, in layman's terms, the difference between what it feels like when you grab a fit person's arm or someone who exercises arm and someone who doesn't. You can feel that the musculature isn't as dense, it isn't as firm. And what that means is if it's not, then that's going to have an effect on your bones. And if it has an effect on your bones, it's going to have an effect on your movement and your structure. And so if you are asked to sit ear, hip, heel in the saddle, no matter what your discipline may be, that's not going to be easy for you to do because you lack that bone density and muscular density in order to maintain that position. So when we talk about fitness or we talk about fit and we talk about the idea of just doing this so that you can get that, it really goes all the way back to how dense, how strong, how stable can we get our body to be. As you were saying with your diagrams, when and if we are to inhibit or to activate those trigger points, it will have an effect on your horse's movement, your horse's way of going. It's not going to have as much extension and relaxation and or range of motion through the shoulder blade, which is going to affect the forelimbs and the hind limbs. So just in that one component of, or those four components in that case, of where the girth sits, where our body sits, we see oftentimes, we, myself, you, and so many other professionals in this case, we see the chair seat. And we talk about what it looks like when a rider isn't able to get that biomechanical symmetry or position where they're sitting more so upright, because, you know, upright is different for everyone. But the issues in this case, as you also talked about the seat, is we're having an issue with lower back, mid back, and pelvic positioning, and the inability for us to move forward and backwards as well as side to side or with the horse's movement. And what I've seen over the past few years is riders of different age ranges who come to me and they say, I had an untimely dismount. And then they explain the situation, and then I take them through an assessment, and I'm able to say, well, yeah, if he goes left unexpectedly, you're automatically going to go right unexpectedly because you can't even stabilize through this area of your body. So if you couldn't stabilize in 0 points, whatever the time frame second is, which is reaction time, muscular or core stiffness, which is one of the first aspects that we need in order for our musculature to fire, and then the stability of those things, then how are we going to save the human and the horse from something that should be normal? And as you've ridden for many years at different levels, you understand there's a level of fitness, or there's a baseline that every rider needs, no matter what their discipline is, to handle those three components that I just talked about. So when it gets to the trigger points here, it's, can we get the tight muscles? Can we get the muscles that are not strong enough, or the joints of our body are not stable enough to get back and into that position so we can draw that line more naturally? Because if the leg goes forward, we're definitely going to hit those not bladder points, those trigger points. And if the girth is in the wrong position, we're going to get those trigger points. So those are just two quick examples of how we have an effect on our horse as well as their movement when we inhibit them by accident or by ignorance.
You mentioned something earlier, and that made me really sit up. Right in the get-go, you said ear, hips, and heels. And that has changed because it was forever shoulder, hips, and heels. Because what also changed, if you look at the posture of young people, they're actually like that.
Yes.
Because they're all day like that. And I'm one of them, you know. It's like, it's so hard to not fall into that social media trap and hanging too much on your phone. But that's a massive challenge all us have, is posture these days.
Yes.
You know, and that is what and why it's changed from shoulder, hips, and heels. Because this looks great, shoulder, hips, and heels, but the head is here, and the head is so heavy, right? And what I also see a lot when people do a sitting trot, they go like this.
Absolutely.
It's like the
Bobble,
ball, you had the back of the
bobblehead.
car.
Yes, so
You-
the hula dancer that everyone used to have back in the day that moved in at
Yeah,
360
yeah.
people. Yeah, that it's funny, and I'm glad that you mentioned it in that case because I didn't know that it was shoulder hip heel before. I've only known hip heel,
Yes.
um,
Boy,
ear
that's younger than
shoulder hip heel. But so the thing about just that component right there is there was a study that I was recently learning about, and it was the um, I think the horse can pick up and respond to an inch direction of our head in any direction. So it could be to the left, it could be tilted, it could be down, it could be up, and it can be back. An inch
Wow.
is
Wow.
very, very small when we think of it with my ruler here. It's
Yeah.
very, very small, right? So I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about that much of a difference from where we are.
Wow.
If we're exhibiting forward head posture, which is that extended component, chin jutting forward, misalignment from here to there, that's a lot more than 1 inch, isn't it?
Mhm.
So
So now in your program, are you working the whole body or mainly
absolutely,
just the whole body? Yeah, that's where we're leaning.
absolutely. And the cool thing about what I do in certain exercises and movements, as I'll share with that because you led right into it, is when we talk about the entire body and we piecemeal the components that each person needs. It could be the example of a Superman, which is when you're sitting or you're laying down on the floor prone, like you're going to be flying, arms out in front and legs extended out and back, and you lift everything up at the same time. We're strengthening what we would call on the horse the top line, right? So we're helping them to extend in a certain area, but also to really strengthen those areas. When we do that, the head has to come up, the neck has to come back. What I've seen in my clients, those who I've worked with in person and online, is people tend to look up
Yeah.
rather than just extending and pushing the chin in and the head back. So making that small adjustment in that one exercise is how we also strengthen the neck, or
Yeah.
also strengthening it in the opposite direction, which would be a turtle, laying on your back, doing the same exact thing, pressing the back into the surface and lifting your arms and legs off the floor about 2 to 3, maybe even 5 inches. So not very far, but that's going to help to strengthen the neck going forward. And anti-gravity, which is pushing on you from there, we want to stabilize, which you said in that chicken head position. We don't have that nearly as much because they're able to stabilize first. And
Right.
as my pillars go in the entire program, stability, suppleness, strength, and stamina, we go through that every single time. And when you are able to break down the reason why you're doing a movement and why it applies to the person, it makes so much sense. So we have to stabilize that by getting you to do small bits of time of that isometric movement or that contracted movement. And then over time, it becomes easier. But just those two help to strengthen the neck, the core, the back, the stabilize the hips. The list goes on. All
Yeah.
helping with our posture.
I have another question,
Please.
and we follow the Saddle Fit for Life education system when it comes to saddle fitting.
Mhm.
So all our people who sell Schlese saddles have to have a minimum of saddle fitter level number 1.
Okay.
And there's many different saddle fitting schools out there, and they go all the way up to a saddle fitter level number 1. In the school system, it's called PhD. My hope is that every rider can have at least the kindergarten education. And the kindergarten education is kind of what we're trying to do here, trying to help people to locate where are those negative reflex points or reflex points which creates negative reaction on the horse. And this is why we did what we do. We talk about this series. And if everybody would know it, oh boy, it can help a lot. So our saddle fitters, depends what type of saddles they want to sell, if they want to do it on the side, if they're veterinarians, body workers, they go through this. Some of them is online, some of it is on site. Do you have something like this in your business as well, where you offer your students online courses or different levels? How does that work?
It's funny that you asked that question because the short answer is no, but I've always wanted to to set up a level system of education. Hence why the name is called Equestrian Fitness Academy, which is a place where you go and learn things. And I haven't been able to put that into action just yet, but I see very soon how and why that is important, so that I can get from 1986 to 2025, just like you have, to 2020 to 2040, 55, whatever the time frame is. Because when you are able to educate people at whatever levels going all the way up, you're able to stay in the ecosystem and they speak the same language. So, short answer, no, but I would love to.
And is there in your academy, is this only on one-on-one, or do you have online as well?
I have one to many, and I have one-on-one that takes place within my app. The one to many is a subscription style program where people can come in and get a updated training program each and every month throughout the year, working on those same 4 pillars. And each and every week and each and every month, the categories and formats of the training program changes.
Mm-hmm. And if I go on your website, www.ifafit.com,
Yep.
I can find all that?
You can find that information, especially when you shift over to the EFA page, which is Equestrian Fitness Academy again. And that will give you more information about both programs. Yes.
Okay. Now, we talked now several times about the different reflex points and how it relates on the horse. And I was talking more as a trainer, saddle maker, and saddle fitter and rider.
Right.
And I don't want that on my horse. Can you give any comparison if we would have irritation or stiffness or issues on our latissimus or pectoralis like a horse would have? Do we have anything like that other than the examples I given?
Absolutely. For the human, in every assessment that I do, especially on the one-to-one program, everyone goes through a movement analysis from head to toe, of course, right? So we start at the neck, we work our way all the way down to the ankles, because we see that there's a correlation between the head and the foot, literally and directly. But when it gets to the latissimus area, we check the shoulders, laying on the floor. If in person, we can do it on the standing up on the door frame, lifting the arm above the head. Now, what you'll see is most people will end up having the arm slightly in front of them, and that will be a link to a tight lat and or a tight chest. So what will happen is if your chest is tight, it's going to pull my shoulder down a little bit. If your lats are tight, it's going to inhibit the range of motion of how far you're able to lift up. Now, what I talk about often with riders in the saddle is rein tension. That directly links to rein tension. What I tended to see thus far, something that I'm interested in researching as well, is the tighter someone is in that area, the less give they'll be able to understand, feel, and have. And if they're in that position of a tight back, spinal wise, as well as tight back muscles, musculature, then it will inhibit their ability to communicate. So if we have a lack of range of motion here, you're going to have a desensitization or a lack of understanding, body awareness on how much you're pulling or adding to your, or miscommunicating, with your horse. So that's one simple movement on how the latissimus dorsi muscle affects us in the saddle. Then we talk about the pecs again, right? Another one that riders are, weirdly enough, very, very tight in. And because you were saying we're doing less manual labor now than we've ever done before. But I think that probably transfers over to our seated computer time. We're spending a lot more time on the computer, which is, once again, rounded posture, neck is forward, lack of ergonomics. We'll put that in air quotes because that's still being fought right now. But the ergonomic aspect of, can we keep our eyes level? Are our hands in the right position? Are our shoulders down and back and or relaxed? We see is leading to a rounded shoulder, which is a shortened pec muscle. So getting riders to get their hands behind their head and relax them there, we tend to see tightness in the chest and the upper chest and the lower chest muscle,
that immediately thought of when you talked about Superman. It's hard to make a Superman if you're so tight here, right? To really open it up. Good luck to sit soft and supple to the horse. And this is so cool what you're just saying. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I jumped in while you had a glass of water. Go.
Thoracic extension is something that is not typically practiced often enough or trained often enough in our equestrian demographic. And I have been working towards helping riders do exactly that. For one example, to get a rider to relax in this area, which is also to stretch the rectus abdominis, which you already showed on the horse a couple slides back on the left side. That muscle, as we want them to engage and use it to get that contact with the rider and also to move forward, we also have to do that. So if we're constantly tight in the abdomen, which is crazy to think of considering we're doing less punches than we used to, but it goes back to the body positions. Most riders drive a lot, most riders sit a lot, and most riders travel quite a bit. And if they're not doing either of those two, then that means they're sitting on the couch other than their saddle time, which means that in a seated sport, we spend majority of our time in sedentary positions. Even if you ride 10 horses a day, you're still doing technically a seated sport. You post a bit, but you're still in that sort of angle that can be considered the two angles, hip knee ankle angles, that would be considered sedentary.
Yeah. So if you compare a football player, ice hockey player, soccer player, anybody who was a half squats and accelerate lots,
Yes,
they have very developed gluteus maximus. Most riders really underdeveloped there, right? And they're very tight in their hip extension, in their I mean, I seen the first time in 2006 when they had a physiotherapist working with riders at the National Riding Academy in Germany. And what he did to them when he hip extended, when he put his thumb there in the groin, they were all in pain. He says that should not be because you're so
Absolutely.
tight.
Yes.
Right. And maybe you can talk a little bit when riders are so tight in this area here, and then of course underdeveloped in their butt muscle.
What we are just as of recent, maybe the past year to two, we've been talking more about the psoas muscle. For those who may be listening and not watching, PSOAS is the name of a muscle group that aids in spinal stability and hip flexion. It also does a little bit more, but we'll keep it simple with those two right now, the main two functions. So in stabilizing the spine and the pelvis, what it allows is, let's just say, for example, the sitting trot. Someone who has a tight psoas and an underactive glute will have an issue, or might have an issue, because you can always scale something over the musculature. But if you do those things properly, and if you have the right length and tension that you need, it will be easier for you to master or understand or to learn that skill. But what we're learning now is we're going over tricks and tips and ways to do something that inevitably is going to be an issue either now or down the road if we don't fix, and I put fix in air quotes, but work towards lengthening and stabilizing the areas of that part of our body. So you mentioned the piriformis. It's a small outer thigh / glute muscle, as well as the psoas, which is going to pitch us forward. We're pitched forward, those muscles are lengthened. We're asking one to work more than the other, or asking them to work in tandem, and one is over tight or overly tight, and the other one is underactive. It will have a repercussion in the saddle. So we go no stirrups, we go these things, and we're trying to strengthen the rider, but technically, as I've always said, those things should not take place on the horse. Those things should take place off.
I'm going to put you on the spot now and wrap this up.
Yeah.
And but we do this because you and I are passionate about our job.
Yes.
Our emotional paycheck is when we see a change in the horse, in your case, in the rider,
right?
And the interface, what I'm adjusting, making, fitting the saddle, can help both beings. So the question I have for you is the same question a lot of my saddle fitters have: is What if the rider does not just want to do it? Well, there's this old saying, you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Majority of the riders love their horse, and they
Yes.
do everything for them. And some of them are competitors. They want to also win and want to be better than
Yes.
maybe the friends. So competitor or passionate horse lover, none of them want to hurt the horse intentionally or have their horse's life shortened dramatically because they don't know the negative reflex points. So my goal is that everybody knows how to locate them and where to find them. So we also know time is money, and most people don't have time
Mhm.
to sit down and learn. And I think, I don't want to put word in your mouth, the hardest one for you is get riders to commit. How
Yeah.
do you get your clients, your students, and your people we're trying to reach with this seminar to take action to work on their body? What is your 11-second elevator pitch?
Excellent. So I think the answer to that is we talk about the things that we do and we throw money at and for our horse all the time. We're happy to do that when the next person comes out, the next professional comes out and says, here's what I need, here's what you need to do. We'll shell out that money. But when it comes to it's our time to take care of ourselves in that case, we typically hiccup. And culture and history have led to the reason why we've been in this position. What my job is to do is to help that light bulb to come off in riders' brains to say, you know what, I am just as much a part of this journey to helping the horse, and I had no idea before. And learning and listening to you and other people that I've collaborated with who are all professionals in their own right as well, they've all said that the rider's ability, the rider's inability, and their fitness levels are what's hindering the aspects of their horse living their best life. My
I was
clients understand that, and they say, you know what, EFA, this is why I want to join EFA and work with you, because I not only see the passion, the education, and the experience, but I understand that you're here to truly help my horse by helping you.
I so was hoping you're saying that. I was so under my breath thinking, oh, please say it. You can only help the horse if you take accountability and work on your body, because listen, the top football players, the top athlete in the world, what do? They
Yeah.
have other training to compensate for the muscles they don't use in
Right.
that. So this was an absolutely pleasure, Aoife, and I
Thank you.
know many people who listen to this who are in the industry of making saddles, fitting saddle, adjusting saddles, will send their students to you and hopefully and have clients who understand, yes, I want the best for my horse, so I'm going to look after my body too. And besides that, movement is death. We need to move, and we need to take action on things, and we feel so much better when we do that. So It's a double whammy. Not only do you feel much better and live much longer, your horses do so much better. So this is why it's so important that you mentioned that, and it was great to have you on this series.
Thank you so much. As I always say, do it for your horse.
Okay.
Do it for your horse. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. All the best. Take care.
To the next one. Thank you now.
Bye-bye.